at the same time. Having managed to entrench this anomaly, members of the National Assembly are now attempting to determine the amount of money counties get, despite the clear constitutional provisions on the revenue sharing. The members of the National Assembly are also scheming to dip their fingers into more executive projects like road maintenance levy fund at the national constituency level, in addition to the National Government Constituency Development Fund and the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. The Constitution assigns 3 roles to members of Parliament, and this is universal. 1, representation; 2, legislation; and 3, oversight. I repeat, representation, legislation, and oversight, period. Execution or implementation of programs has never been and can never be the job of members of Parliament without creating a serious accountability crisis in our governance system to the detriment of us all. Parliament makes laws and ensures that the laws are implemented and followed. It is against this backdrop that I find the ongoing standoff between our 2 houses of Parliament over division of revenue extremely scary, unhelpful, and unnecessary. The Constitution we promulgated in 2010 guides the way the government and our country works. It divides the government into 3 parts, each with the power to keep the other parts under control. It further creates 2 levels of government: the national government and 47 county governments. The 3 parts you know: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The 2 levels of government work in close consultation, as espoused in Article 6, subsection 2 of the Constitution, which states, and I quote, "The governments at the national and county levels are distinct and interdependent, and shall conduct their mutual relations on the basis of consultation and cooperation," unquote. Now, because MPs want to have their way with the abrogation of the Constitution and getting their pound of the flesh with regard to NGCDF, the Senate and the National Assembly are unable to agree on something the law is so clear about: sharing of the revenue between the national government and the county governments. Apparently, the National Assembly is in support of provisions that will lower the amount of money shareable to counties, against the provision of the laws of the land and the tradition established since the coming of the devolved units. Against the laws of the land, the National Assembly is supporting a proposal that would provide that any revenue shortfall in the country is borne by both levels of government. The result of this unhelpful and unnecessary deadlock is that the operations of the already strained devolved units are moving towards a standstill, with critical services in jeopardy. This unlikely and unhelpful fight over allocation of revenue to counties threatens a shutdown at the counties at a time Kenyans need the units to function optimally and help boost the country's increasingly fragile economy. The National Assembly is pushing for the proposed amendment to the Division of Revenue Act, in which they recommend a 380 billion allocation to counties, which stands in contrast to to the 400 billion already stipulated in the Appropriations Act, which is currently in force. The National Assembly is going all out to reduce revenue allocation to counties in complete disregard of the Constitution and the recommendations of the Senate. This move is not only illegal and unconstitutional, it also sets an extremely dangerous precedent which, if allowed to stand, will lead to a slow but steady strangulation and eventual killing of counties. The National Assembly must get it very clear that revenue allocation to counties can only go up, not down, unless the intention is to kill devolution. The Senate had asked for 416 billion for counties for the year 2024-25. After negotiations, Senate settled on the figure of 400 billion, which is set out in the Division of Revenue Act 2024. The law is clear that counties get at least 15% of the national revenue, and 400 billion is 15% of the national revenue. Every 5 years, this country goes to elections, and all positions are available, from president to governor to senate to MPs and all the way to the members of county assemblies. People know the roles and responsibilities assigned to positions they choose to run for, and nobody should attempt to change the roles and responsibilities midway. It is urgent that both houses come together to allow the country governments get their rightful share of funds and discharge their responsibilities to the people of the country. The National Assembly must do the right thing and work with the Senate to get the correct amount of money to counties. More than a decade into the two levels of government, the management and funding of devolved units should be getting more efficient and more predictable. The current standoff and attempts to tamper with the location indicate a dangerous backward march. I urge our members of parliament to be enablers of devolution and refuse to be in partnership with those determined to frustrate and kill devolution. End of statement. But I may just add off the cuff that devolution that we came up with has got many enemies. Many people do not want devolution to work in this country. You know, we had put in the Constitution a minimum of 15%, but it does not have to be the minimum. It can go higher up. That's why in the BBI we had wanted to raise it to a minimum of 35%. For your information, in a country like Nigeria, which is devolved, a three-tier, the local governments get 20% of the revenue. The state government get 35%. The federal government gets 45%. In other words, 55% of the total revenue in Nigeria are devolved. And that's when the devolved units work, is when the country works. It is in the interest of the national government to release more resources to the counties. That is when this country is going to be properly run. Because there are several devolved functions like health, like agriculture, and part of infrastructure, which is not working properly because resources are not going down to the counties. A big chunk of the money going to counties today is purely for recurrent expenditure, paying salaries to the staff. Very little money is remaining for the governors to do development work. And that's the reason why I find it very unfair that governors are being blamed for lack of development in their counties. And members of parliament should move away from trying to construct roads, from trying to construct health centers, schools and so on. Those are the responsibilities of the county government, not a national parliament. Thank you. No, only this subject. I will do another statement generally, then you can ask general questions. Today it's about this issue of revenue share. Okay?
What's the way forward? Because now we are seeing that on some accounts, National Assembly is having a fund, which the started implementing, then they're trying to show the fund, but what's the best way to us? How can we resolve this fund that you have the county and the people and the local accounts that is up the
No, it's a standard which is unnecessary. I'm just asked the members of National Assembly to be more patriotic and move away from functions which are not theirs. It is very clear. It's so clear that, I feel very frustrated because I was involved in the drafting of this constitution. And we know exactly how this constitution is supposed to work. But the greed of members of parliament. Members of parliament want to be constructing roads. Members of parliament want to be constructing health centers. They want to be contractors themselves. Who is going to oversight the government? If the oversighter himself is the implementer. It does not happen anywhere in the world. I'm not saying to say it clearly. So today,
it seems Parliament is not in support of the nation policy. It's very clear to tenants of the best levels. And there have been some calls from other corners that tenants themselves now should start the process of the policy against this. If they take that route, how can that hold water? And not very well, it's not like you see that now there are also of their calls.
you see, we want Kenya to understand exactly what the Constitution provides and who is really at fault here. I'm basically trying to create some clarity for this issue because there's some kind of cloud. People don't understand really the bone of contention between the Senate and the National Assembly. And you can also see that, on the other hand, the county government are being blamed, the governors, for lack of development, that they're not doing anything. The development which is available is only done by members of parliament. See members of parliament constructing roads, members of parliament constructing health centers, schools and so on. Because the funds which are supposed to go to the counties for those purposes are being held by the national government in what they call National Government Constituency Fund. And even this road levy fund is going to members of parliament. This is not the work of MPs, this is the work of counties. Today, the bulk of the revenue that goes to counties goes for purely recurrent expenditure. Nearly 70% of the revenue going to counties is only for recurrent expenditure, paying salaries to workers and so on. Only 30% remain for development, which is very inadequate indeed. Because the bulk of which should be going there is going into these other funds which are under control of members of parliament. So if that were to change, then the equation will change. Nearly 50% of revenue going to the counties would be for development projects. And the counties are the ones which are actually best suited to do the development. And then you've got the county assemblies to oversight. Members of parliament are supposed to oversight the national government. You see, they're supposed to represent their constituents. Two, they're supposed to legislate. And three, they're supposed to oversight the government. But they themselves are now being involved in the execution of projects at the constituency level. For there's very little work being done in the National Assembly. The Assembly is most of the times empty. There are no debates taking place in that parliament the way it used to be when we were members of parliament those days. Parliament is no longer doing its work as a National Assembly. This is why we are really calling them to account. Well, so the fuel levy fund is supposed to be used for maintenance of roads at the national level and at the county level. So that should go directly to the kitty of the county government, not constituency fund being controlled by members of parliament. That's what I'm saying. It is the members of parliament are not supposed to be executing things. The members of parliament are supposed to be oversighting. But if an MP himself is the executor, you have a situation where MPs themselves are the contractors. I know examples where you find a president going to launch a road, the contractor is a member of parliament. So if that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what conflict of interest is. It is embarrassing, very embarrassing indeed.
When the president came to power, he promised to empower the president. He promised to enhance the source of the government. What we are seeing from the Secretary of the National Assembly is also part of these lies that the president look at.
Yes, you know, there's a whole competition between the National Assembly, the national government, and the counties. See, there are people who don't believe in devolution, people who really prefer a unitary system of government. They think that governors are an unnecessary burden. They would rather deal with DCs. And you see these attempts to resurrect provincial administration, which actually under the constitution was supposed to be replaced with the county government. But we are dealing with people who do not want devolution. So devolution is under threat. And those of us who were there, who fought to bring devolution, must stand up and be counted and defend devolution. We do believe very strongly that a devolved system of government is what will ensure equity in sharing of resources in our country and equal development across the whole country. Thank you.